Ever since the coronavirus set in, I've been working from home. So, two and a half months now.
And it's my opinion that dogs actually started this whole thing so that their humans would spend more time with them. So we walk about 2.5 miles a day.
Yeah, it's become easily my favorite part of the day. Really enjoy the change.
A few new things that I've tried that I found out that I really like. First off, working from home. Kind of forced into it, but I've really enjoyed it. Second, listening to podcasts. The spookier and more mysterious, the better. And third, not showering every day. But that might change once I start seeing people again, so.
Something I've tried again recently for a second time, after failing the first time, is embroidery. And I've found that I really, really like it.
I have reconsidered not using the phrase double entendre for the next week.
I used to be scared of dogs and never want a dog. And then I was challenged by a friend and kept meeting different dogs, and I totally, not just reconsidered, but did a 180, and we got a dog now, Charlie, and he's the best, cutest thing, and I can't imagine my life without him.
Over the past couple of months, I've been working from home, and honestly, I really didn't think I was going to like that for a variety of reasons, but you know, my team has been just crushing it with work, turning out some great projects, and during lunchtime, Selena and I have been taking walks every day, and that has been so much fun. I gotta tell you, it's gonna be a little bit tricky going back.
Hi y'all, so let me tell you a little story about fish. I think fish are weird, ugly, slimy, and stinky. Because of this, I refused to eat it most of my life. Until one year, I went to England and was invited into a home where they made me dinner, and on my plate was a big honkin' slice of salmon, which I had no choice to eat. But that was a good thing for me because I ended up liking it, and since then I've been trying fish all the time and like it most of the time. So now I'm a freaking fish eater. The moral of my story is, if you don't like fish, you should try it anyways, because you don't know, you may end up liking it, and it's healthy, so try it. Thanks. Peace out.
I have discovered or reconsidered that I like not texting or talking on the phone when I'm driving.
I've never been interested in feeding the birds or having bird feeders or anything in my yard, and since this virus hit, my in-laws have hung their bird feeders out, and we've got plants with flowers, and they've come in different kinds, like different birds, orioles, never seen an oriole in my life, hummingbirds, blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds, everything you can imagine, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good morning again, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, not just to these few minutes together through a screen, but also thank you for taking these messages to heart. The feedback I've received from you has been beyond encouraging. So, again, thank you. In the first episode of this series, I noted that we're all walking through this pandemic in our own unique way. We're finding new rhythms and new norms. We're asking questions like, will things go back to normal? And really, would we even want them to? And where do we go from here? What can we do in the meantime? See, we don't have a clear picture where this will take us. But in the meantime, we can have a clear idea of God's grace getting you and me ready for a wave of something that we have never seen before. Many of us are understandably thinking about, when will this end? And what if we also started thinking about what could come next? See, this eventually will pass. And how we come out on the other side will be determined by what we do right now. We have a unique opportunity to rethink how we do life and what we do with our most valuable resource, time. So, what can we do in the meantime? we can pray for revival. We can find a quiet spot to be alone with God and draw a circle in your mind around yourself and then pray for everything inside that circle. Because revival will never come to us, but rather it'll come through us. So let's do some serious spring cleaning in the soul, in the basement of our soul. And let's get rid of everything that's hindering us, and let's get ready to ride the next wave of revival. So last week I asked us to consider 3 things. The first was to reconsider what you're doing with this one life that you have left to live. The second thing was to resolve, because unresolved conflict in relationships eat away at everything inside of us. And number 3, to return, to put first things first, setting up Jesus at the center of everything. So today, I'm going to challenge every one of us to take this time and redeem it by reconsidering your life, what you're doing and why you're doing it, and maybe doing something new, which of course brings me to pot roast. Now, I never imagined that an investigation into pot roast would hold my attention. As the story goes, a young wife was preparing a pot roast for her newlywed husband, and she cut the ends off the meat and slid them into the disposal. "What are you doing?" the husband asked incredulously. "The ends get burnt and are the best part. Why would you cut them off and throw them away?" The wife paused, feeling a little embarrassed and mildly defensive. After a moment of reflecting on her actions, she thoughtfully responded, "I don't know. It's just what my mother always did." Well, determined to get to the real reason of the roast end removal, the husband phoned his mother-in-law and posed the same question to her. She laughed and said, "You know, I don't know why. It's just what I saw my mother do." Still undeterred, the husband then called Grandma with the same nagging, unanswered question. With that call, he got to the bottom of it. Grandma replied, "When I was younger, all we had was a small roasting pan. Usually, cutting off the ends was the only way to get it to fit in the pan." The pot roast principle asks us a crucial question. Why do we do the things we do? Because someone else did it? Have we paused long enough to consider why we're doing the things the way we're doing them? Maybe we're losing the best part of ourselves to someone else's way of doing things. There's an old saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I wonder how many of us, if we paused long enough to take an inside inventory, would say something. We may not even know what or how, but something needs to change. Life as we know it is not working. Things that make us feel alive, really alive, things like purpose and progress and people, are a busy blur we see in the rearview mirror as we crawl into bed each night, wondering where another day went and what it was all for. We can be told the burnt ends are the best parts, and yet we keep cutting out the best parts and settle for secondhand stories. We read about other people's marriages, someone else's family or faith adventures, a story you wish for but remains elusive, like watching a cooking show but never baking bread. Maybe now is a good time to get a bigger pan, and to do that we'll need to let go of the old one. God's story is a story of making new things. Once upon a time, there was not a thing, and now there's this thing. Once there was a way of doing things, and now there's a new way of doing things. I sometimes find myself doing things the way someone else did things, simply because somewhere back there it was necessary, and so it worked, like cutting the ends off a roast. But now it's not working, and it's not needed. Something new and fuller and more alive is coming into its time. New rhythms and new ideas and new ways of doing things are emerging. It's what Scripture would call new life. When Jesus arrived, the people who were expecting him were certain that he had showed up to return everything to the way things were, the good old days, back when everything in the world was right, whenever that was. Instead, he throws everyone off by talking about the new, where we go from here. They thought he was taking them back to the way things once were. Instead, he's inviting them to follow him into a new future, one that hasn't been created yet. Throughout the Jesus stories, we hear easy-to-understand metaphors using things like gardening and wine, two timeless and tireless word pictures that have stuck with one generation after another. In one such story, Jesus highlights his mission and clarifies our calling into it. He says, "Who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the wine would burst the wineskins, and the wine and the skins would both be lost. New wine calls for new wineskins." And this is from Mark chapter 2. See, the new and the old have their time. One is seasoned but worn out. The new shows up and the old feels obsolete. But the old way did what we needed it to do to get us to now. And now is new. But new can cause confusion and concern while the old is trying to hang on to what was. They just can't occupy the same time and space without some tearing. So let's observe this in the real world. How many church fights started over one person or one camp wanting to hold on to the way things are while another is wanting something new? When hymns were first introduced into church services hundreds of years ago, there was an almost riot. The style of hymns was taken from the pubs and taverns of the day. Who would dare bring something so irreligious and secular like an organ out of a bar and into God's house? New was tearing the old. How many fights in your own family have started because one person, one part of the family had a new idea about parenting or politics, one they weren't raised with? The old way and the new way have a way of tearing each other apart. I suspect that's part of the point Jesus wants to make. You and I can't move on without some tearing. It's going to hurt. Separation hurts. New brings with it both strangeness and sadness. Jesus introduced a new way of thinking about and relating to God, one that wasn't based on rules and rituals, but rather relationships and reconciliation. We orphans call him Father now. It's what Bible scholars named the New Testament. It's a new story, a new way of relating, a new way of seeing the world and our place in it. But the admission price of getting into this new story was to let go of the old one, the one that isn't working. We can't sew together law and grace and expect life to work. The old is gone and the new has come. Jesus seems clear. To make new wine, you'll need new wineskins, a new start with a new heart. There's a place to enjoy old wine, but if we don't get to making new wine, what will be left for those who come after us? Will we have just consumed everything on ourselves with nothing new for the future? The new future, the one that isn't here yet. This chapter sets up the next. This season of life will bear fruit in the next. What you and I do now, or don't do for that matter, will make a difference 10 years from now, for better or worse. So let's choose better. Let's try something new. So it's here that I want you to reconsider the rest of your life. Yes, I know that's a lot, but it's coming at you faster than you know, and it'll be here before you know it. What's that old catchphrase? The future ain't what it used to be. God says in Isaiah 43:19, "For I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland." God is taking a life that's dried up and making a water park. That's revival. As a teen, I was taught a game that we clumsily called Take Off Something You Don't Need. See, an unsuspecting person would sit in the middle of a circle, and the rest of us in the know would throw a blanket on them with the simple instructions, take off something you don't need. The goal of the game was to see how many pieces of clothing the person would peel off and throw into the circle before realizing it was the blanket they needed to take off, not their clothes. I wonder how many of us are living under security blankets we don't need. Many of us are getting a taste of the future in this quarantine. The awareness that life is too busy and overcrowded to even notice our thirst for something better. Getting back to basics and not only remembering what's really important, but acting on it. Time with your families and your God. Time to catch up on projects and work on your inner life as well. Time to reconsider what possibilities our days ahead could hold for all of us in a world that is sick and tired of being sick and tired. At the end of our days, no one will wish they had spent more time at work or online. We'll want to be surrounded by our loved ones and experience a deeper walk with our God. So why not start now? Take off what you don't need. Eventually the world will return to its frantic rhythm. Greed for the sake of the economy will replace gratitude for simple things. You and I can't control what life throws at us or expects from us. But as an act of resistance, though, let's march to the beat of a different drum, a bass drum with a deep resonance in our soul, a slower rhythm that takes time to play, to pray, to listen, to learn, and best of all, to love. I mean, really love one another. It'll be the fight of our lives, but it'll be a fight worth fighting. Don't let the world and its way of reducing you to just another busy little worker bee have the last word in your life. Take a stand by sitting still and reconsidering what God thinks is really of value. I'm of the opinion, based on careful consideration of Scripture, that God wants a people, first and foremost, for Himself, for one another, and who will speak up for those who aren't being heard, and who will take care of the earth for generations to come. In my mid-20s, my wife and I left our factory jobs to step out into full-time mystery. We didn't know exactly what we were doing, or where we were going, or how we were going to pay for it. What we did know is that God was at work making something new. We eventually worked 3 summers at a camp for inner-city at-risk kids. In the off-season, I drove a truck and built things and organized volunteers for the same inner-city rescue mission. We started a coffee house for the fringe and traveled the state to speak in churches. 10 years ago, we had the privilege of starting New Vintage Bible Church. We received a lot of concern in those early days of doing things different. We wanted the abundant life that Jesus had spoken about, and we're tired of cutting off the ends. We needed a bigger pan, a better story, with a God who was enough to fill it. What we learned looking back is that the bigger pan is really just making room in the one you've already got, getting rid of what's not needed, walking away from what's not working anymore, and making room to receive something new. Jesus said that the cares of this life will choke us. It's not a shortage of air. Air is abundant. It's the inability to get the air to where it needs to go because something is blocking it. So, what's blocking you? What's in the way of your life? What things do you not need anymore, and in fact are getting in the way of something new? Change is coming. In the meantime, reconsider your life. What new thing is God creating through you? Thank you guys so much. I look forward to continuing this conversation next week, and we're going to talk about reconciliation, and we're going to talk about returning to the Lord and what that looks like. If you need assistance, we have a fantastic church family that would love to just step up and step in and help however we can help, even from a distance. So please don't hesitate to get a hold of us at newvintagebiblechurch.org. Also, if you'd like to support this ministry, you can click over to our website and you'll see the contribute button there in the top menu, newvintagebiblechurch.org. Also, love to hear your feedback. So leave your comments on Facebook, our Facebook page, Instagram, and Google. We love seeing those reviews. We love hearing your feedback. And thank you guys so much. I will catch up with you very soon.